Well, back in 1984, my father was killed in a terrorist attack. It was the time when we were part of a conflict in Northern Ireland, and the IRA were responsible. My father was a politician. And for me, it was a choice. Do I, straight after the bomb went off, do I find a way to bring something peaceful to this? And I was 27 and didn't really know how to bring something peaceful to a terrorist attack with the grief and all the trauma of going through that. But I thought I would find a way to bring something positive, and I didn't want to go the blame route. I didn't want to go the revenge route. I wanted to go the peaceful route. And a few weeks later, I ended up sharing a taxi in London with a complete stranger, and he was from Northern Ireland. And I said to him, I'm trying to find out, why would someone want to join the IRA? Why would someone want to be involved in a political violence struggle? Do you know? And he said, actually, I do know, because my brother was in the IRA and he was killed last year by a British soldier. So we represented two sides at that time. And this is the height of the conflict in Northern Ireland, between Northern Ireland and England, and also in Northern Ireland. And we should have been enemies. We both had lost loved ones to each other's side, but we spoke about a world where peace was possible. And I left that taxi thinking, I can build a bridge across the divide. And that stayed with me. And even though no one knew, it gave me a sense of something I could do. So finally, we had the peace process, like many years later. And I built the most difficult bridge that I could build, which was I met the man who was responsible for planting the bomb, which killed my father. And that bridge, like no one knew I was going to do it. It was just something that I wanted to do for me, so I could hear his story and see him as a human being, that I could understand that he had a human face and a human side. He wasn't just the man who planted the bomb. And so I went in 2000 to Dublin to meet him, to plant a bridge, to build a bridge. I can still remember the intensity of it and my apprehension, my fear. How am I going to feel when I'm sitting with him? Am I going to regret it? Will he even turn up? But I'd done a lot of preparation. I think that was really important, like my own preparation, as much as you can prepare for something like that. And I had very low expectations. All I wanted was to be able to look into his eyes and see some of his humanity. And I knew he was going to come with a lot of political justification, because for them, they were the oppressed. They were the ones who had no voice. My father represented the power. And I knew he would come with that justification. And that was fine. I understood that. But I was really curious, who was he beneath that rhetoric? And how did he feel to be with me? And did he think about my dad? But of course he didn't think about my dad, because for him, my dad was just a man in uniform. It was a legitimate target. He didn't see any human beings when he planted that bomb. That's the nature of violent conflict. So I just wanted to be in the same room with him. And he thought he would come in, he would explain his actions, and he wanted to do that. And then we would leave, and that would be that. And I thought it'd be a one-off meeting too, but he was overcome by the enormity of being with me, and the fact that I didn't judge him and get angry. And if I had, he said that would have been a lot easier. But he said he was disarmed by my empathy. And there was a moment when he changed the tone of his voice, he changed his language, and he basically opened his heart and wanted to know about my father. And I saw his humanity, and I empathized with him. And so for both of us, this new journey started, and it was really, really challenging, because that was more than I imagined I was going to receive from this first meeting. It was really unfinished. Like, we'd started something, and like there was nobody who could understand what, I mean, now, with all our understanding of restorative justice, there are many people who've done what I've done, and there are people who would understand, and I sometimes give people support who are also on this journey. But back then, I didn't know where to go with all the complex emotions I had. But I just wanted to go back for a second meeting, and then that carried on, and then we got filmed, and eventually went public. And about a year later, but I never meant to go public. This was just about my personal response for me to feel better. But now 20 years on, I had a lot of events planned for the autumn for him and I to really take stock about what have we learned, what have been the challenges, what are the insights, and the fact that it can still be difficult. It's not like, okay, we've done the work, finished, end of story. No, human beings aren't like that. We're complex. One day it feels easy and one day it doesn't, and so we're both still learning from the whole experience. So it's very much my charity I founded and my visions, and sometimes Patrick comes and works with me, and sometimes I go and work with him. He's taken quite a break recently, which is fine. He's actually written a book that's due to be published, but it's been postponed like everything. And so I've done a lot more traveling on my own. So I suppose I've taken what I've learned, and I make it into work, like talks and workshops. I do a lot of work in schools, empowering young people to be positive change makers, to turn trauma around, because trauma is everywhere. The schools I go to, the last school I went to before lockdown, I remember there were 3 young men at the end who came in tears, and they shared their stories with me and said that they now knew that they were on the right path and they have hope, and that they're also turning around their trauma. I also do like conflict transformation and listening, and life skills. I just turned it into a way of how can we communicate in a way so we can listen to each other? How can we create safe places so people who have different opinion can come and hear each other? Because I do think it's possible, but it needs preparation and support, and so that's the sort of work I'm doing. And yeah, well, there's nothing happening, I suppose, from like the politicians, but there's lots of grassroots organisations doing that work. And I was in Paris just before lockdown, and there was 2 amazing men from Northern Ireland, and they're doing a lot of work. So they represent different sides of the conflict, and they've all been bereaved, and some of the most horrendous stories, and they share platforms, and they're very much coming from, we all have our story, and we need to listen and learn from each other, very much like Robbie was saying last week. And that's what I feel as well, that an enemy for me is someone whose story we just haven't heard, and we haven't heard that for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes it's just ignorance, sometimes it's because we have some judgment or prejudice, or we so think that they're the wrong ones and we're the right ones, and that requires some inner adjustments. But I think it is happening, not enough, and I don't see it being led by the politicians. So there are a few, but it is definitely happening. A big, huge question, really important. And there are many, many people around the world doing this work in empathy. Like people have written books and films and written studies. But I would say the main thing is that we can all do the work. It's very easy. We've all inherited the other. We all can have moments where we see people as less than their full humanity. It's every time I feel anger, there's a part of me that still wants to blame someone and make someone less than human, so that we can catch it in ourselves. I think it starts with us. And then for me, I think my work in school with young people is the sort of most important. And I actually find them very open to be empathic when they've had a chance to be heard. I think when people are listened to, that's such a gift we can give people, listening to whatever they're feeling or going through without wanting to change it or fix it or judge it. Then people naturally then reach a place where they're interested then in being more curious again. So I think listening is an absolute necessary starting point. If we listen to each other, give people a voice, and get curious, find those stories. Well, I think empathy leads to action. For example, like now I have empathy with Patrick, and I don't agree with what he's done. Empathy is not about condoning the violence at all, but I understand, what led him to joining the IRA and deciding that for him, violence was the only strategy that he had. And I wonder if I'd lived his life, would I have made the same choices? And that to me is what empathy is, walking in his shoes. But now I have that, then I want for him the same needs that my community, my family, my tribe has. Empathy leads to action, leads to actually wanting to change things so that everybody has the same rights, everybody has their needs met. So to me, empathy isn't something that we just do on our own. It's something then that has to lead to action.
Listening to your story, I was wondering, you talked about the meeting in the taxi that sort of triggered you to go and build bridges. Then you had the opportunity to meet with the one that planted the bombs, so the person that did you harm in a way. How important is a physical or other way of meeting to create that empathy or to create the understanding for each other, that really actually sitting down together? What is the importance of that in the process of understanding and letting go of the violence?
It was really important to meet him because even though I'd done a lot of work and preparation, I'd met other men and women who'd been in the IRA. There was nothing as powerful as just sitting, with the man who killed my father and not blaming him. To do that required an amazing strength in me, which I didn't know I had. But also it might not have happened. If it hadn't been safe for me to do that, I wouldn't have done that. Sometimes meeting people who hurt us is not okay because they might hurt us again. Or if he'd never been caught, then I wouldn't have known who it was who'd killed my father. And there were other bridges to build. Like, it wouldn't have stopped my journey. My journey was to create peace out of this violence. And I would have found a way, even if I hadn't been able to meet Patrick. I thought he wasn't going to meet me. I heard 3 times he didn't want to. In fact, that's not true. He always said yes. So I was actually resigned that it might never happen. But my transformational journey that I was on was still going to happen. And I actually feel quite grateful, even though it's been challenging, that I had a physical person that I could meet and engage with.
You said you had this idea of building bridges when you got out of the taxi. So was it already in that years that you started creating this project, or was it only after your meeting with Patrick Magee that you created the project and that you did steps? And how did you start this project?
I started the project after I met Patrick Magee, and it first of all was just a very small little organisation. Mind you, it's still a tiny charity now. And it was because after we went public, we got invited to speak in different events, and I began to develop my work. And it seemed that the charity was the best way to carry it and to get funding. So even that's been quite tricky. So that was sort of how I did it. It was quite very, very organic, and it is an absolutely tiny charity. It is actually just me doing the work and is dependent on me. But it's worked as my way of my expression to the world, and the aim is so wide and open that everything I want to do fits into it, which is basically resolving conflict around the world, and so that no one gets hurt, and supporting all the different ways of that we can to resolve conflict. Well, like tonight I get to be with all of you, and that's amazing. And like the young people I meet in schools, the people I've been around the world, like you had Robbie Damlin, she's a great friend of mine. It gives me more than it takes. I feel absolutely blessed. It's a privilege to be doing this work because of who I meet, and that I start having real conversations straight away about things that matter. And I'm so passionate about the world, and I care so much about the people in the world. And if I can make a little bit of a difference, then that actually helps me. I couldn't go back to being whatever a normal person is, but I couldn't have had a job away from this. My heart's been touched in a way which means that I need to do this work. And I love it. Of course, sometimes the funding is a problem, and sometimes traveling is difficult, but I thrive on it. I love it. I'm learning all the time. I'm definitely learning, and it almost feels like I'm always just beginning to learn about this work, because I think it's the hardest thing to do is to build bridges. And I have downstairs in my tiny house, I have my youngest daughter and her boyfriend. They're both circus performers. They've been studying in the Netherlands, and they're teaching me so much about resolving conflict and managing a little space and different needs. And all the time I'm learning and loving the learning.
Yes, hi, nice to meet you.
Hi.
I was thinking, when you are working in other countries and helping to resolve conflicts there, what have been the biggest challenges, or how do you adapt to different situations? Is there a specific path you always follow, or do you come open-minded in, I assume, but can you say something about it?
Well, I never go anywhere to solve their problems or with any ideas of what they should do. To me, this is about, like, the restorative way is to work with people rather than like over them or control them. This is absolutely shifting the balance. So I'm just there to share my story and to lend it in a way which is appropriate. So it's not about me fixing anything or rescuing or sorting out, having any answers. And if I can, through my story, create a safe place for other people to have a conversation, then that in itself, I think, is fine, and that's enough. And the obstacle that I think is everywhere, we all have that, is our sense of righteousness, that we have the truth, we're the ones who have been most hurt, and I see that everywhere around the world. And I think trying to shift that to realizing that actually, we're all traumatized. We all have a story. We've all been hurt, and we've all hurt people. We've all hurt people. One of the things that I do is I do restorative justice, and I work for the local police. And the hardest thing to do is a neighborhood dispute. Like, I just won't do it anymore, because you have two neighbors and they speak the same language, they're in the same country, and yet their sense of, I'm the one who's, I've done nothing wrong, it's all them, and they've got justification and stories, and it's the hardest one to shift, is things about the garden fence, So when you go to a conflict and you've had real trauma and devastation, actually people I find them more open to shifting sometimes than some of the more sort of mundane conflicts, which is quite interesting.
There's a Dutch philosopher, his name is Bart Brandsma. I don't know if you heard about it. But what he actually says is that bridge builders could amplify the polarization between groups and make it stronger. And you already answered that a little bit, like in a real dispute with two polarized groups or more. When there is a bridge builder starting to come in, then you make the polarization stronger, the opposition. So in this context, where is your role? Because you say you're bridge building, what is your role, and what kind of groups do you think are most important to talk to?
Our whole ethos is that when we bring people together, there should be no surprises. We've done all the work beforehand, we've done all the preparation, and we know that each person or each group can listen to the other group. And I think that's really important, that there's just so much preparation. And so you know that they can listen to each other. We do like loads of risk assessment. Now, me and Patrick, there was no one doing that, but I think I did my own risk assessment on the situation, and I knew that it was going to work. Maybe not as much as it did, but I knew that it was going to. So I think there are ways. So if I was going to bring a group together or two people, and I thought there was a chance that they were just going to go and blame each other and they couldn't listen, then there'd be no point in bringing them together. No, then that's not the right time. And I give you an example. This is just as a victim of a homicide. Her father was killed, and I brought her together. There's always two of us that work in restorative justice. Brought her to meet the guy who killed her father, and took a year. And that was fine, you know. And then the meeting was amazing, and like that's it, one-off meeting. Her needs were met, but she doesn't need to see him again. So I think it can take time, and any skilled mediator or bridge builder or sort of justice will know the importance of preparation. And it's not about success. It's not about always having a face-to-face. You know, if it's not appropriate to bring groups together, then we don't bring them together. It's kind of clear, I think, and always do this work with someone else so that you can check what's going on and how do they feel.
Thank you very much.
But I was just thinking about Robbie's work and also my work sometimes, you know, like when we're sharing stories, which it's not quite so confrontational as bringing opposing groups, but like there are people who will start hearing Robbie or start hearing me, and they'll have certain ideas and prejudices, and then that can change through hearing the story. So I think the power of the story is really important, and that people might have like massive resistance, you know, and feel like, oh, I can't possibly understand them. Then they hear the story and then they can change, and that I think is the power of story. Oh, well, thank you. First of all, I really, really appreciate this opportunity, and it's been amazing for me. So thank you for every question. And I would say let's maybe move from bridge builder to being like a change maker, a positive change maker as well. And you all are. You know, you wouldn't be here. We're all here because we believe in changing the world and making a difference. Whether we're building bridges, whether we're creating a positive difference. Whatever work we're doing, this is who we are. And I think right now, in this time, there's a lot of trauma around, there's a lot of suffering and pain, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And I just want to say that for me, the important thing is to be really tender and gentle with ourselves, and to know that, you know, we're challenged, we're doing our best, you know, we can give that empathy to ourselves, and that's to me really, really important, and to know that we're all doing our best. And these are really, really challenging times where we're all being called upon. I bet everyone here has a unique situation of people they worry about, they care about, things have changed, all sorts of uncertainties, you know, and I just send my heart and my love and support to, you know, every one of you, and to know that, you know, we all can make a difference. I think there's also an opportunity here to bring kindness and empathy and love back into our world in a way that hasn't been there before. So I send my love and support to each one of you.